Gayle, how are you?
Hi, Ryan. Doing well. How about you?
Good. You're the smart person. You are sitting in Arizona while I'm up, and it was 15 below here this morning, and you're originally from here, so you are literally the smarter person of the two on the phone.
Well,
And
thanks to a lot of things. We're fortunate to be down here in Scottsdale, and it is beautiful.
And I think the purpose of the interview is you're going to be sharing us how you've earned through the School of Hard Knocks and a lot of hard work to earn your keep down there. That's for sure. And,
Yeah.
and I'm excited and I'm happy to have you on the show because you and your husband have done a really good job, and you have a lot to be proud of over the last couple decades that you've been in business. And it's a really cool story because I went to school, for the listeners, I went to school with your kids, and then I've followed you. Actually, I don't know if you ever knew this, Gayle, but I had the opportunity. It was literally work for you guys or go work for my family business. I don't know if you knew that, but that was like the final decision. Yeah. So it was either going to be selling healthcare benefits or copiers, right? So I got suckered in at the last second by my dad's GM to go work for them. So this story could be different if that hadn't happened. I might not even be here. But for the let's kind of go back and I love to start with how you guys started the business, and you partnered with your husband, which I've heard good and bad stories. So there's a lot behind some of the things that you guys have done. So how did you guys decide to start your own agency and decide to break out on your own?
Yeah, well, I actually have, and Pat as well, we have two entirely different college majors, and neither of them are insurance. But when I started in my original career, it just didn't, which was actually nursing. It actually was not what I thought it would be. And so I only stayed in that profession for about a year and was actually approached by someone in life insurance, but they touted it as financial planning. And
heard that before.
Right. And so the idea of being independent and the sky's the limit from an earnings standpoint, being your own boss, all of that was very attractive to me. So I went into the life insurance business when I was 25. And Pat at the time was working in a property and casualty brokerage. And within the first year, I earned more than double what he was making.
That's awesome.
And so he thought, wow, this looks attractive. So within probably 2 years, he made the decision to move into the more of the life insurance and employee benefits business. That's how it all started. And so we went into business together. And
what year was this?
The rest is history. We went into business together in 84, and I had started in 82.
So when you guys did that, Gayle, did you guys set any foundational boundaries between yourselves? Because I mean, you have to be one of the few people I know that did it within two companies and for decades without totally killing each other. So I'm sure there's some other underlying stories, but did you set boundaries to begin with, or did you just learn on the fly? How did you guys make it work?
Really simple. I had my own clients and he had his own clients. So the difficult part was, which one does the employee look toward for, who's in charge, really? So when it came to that piece, wasn't always a hard line, but the employees knew when to come to me for certain items, which were more human resource, I guess, related. And then when it came to maybe employee disputes that, something wasn't going right, they typically went to Pat. But that changed over the years. But the biggest item was that Pat and I were equals. He wasn't my boss. I wasn't his boss. I had my clients. He had his clients. We managed our clients differently. And the place where we worked together was the employees and the looking toward the future and growth of the business.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think in your world and the agency and insurance world, it might be a little bit easier because you do have your own book versus managing one big sales force, or so you have different revenue channels or revenue books instead of having to choose operations or finance or sales or something like that.
Right. Well, we did have salespeople. And so I took over more of the training of the salespeople, but Pat also did work with the salespeople. So we did have a sales force.
So you guys were, when you guys started, did you have like a vision of like, was it just make money as a salesperson? Did you have a vision to build a business like you guys did? And then maybe kind of give some overall like, metrics for timeline and how you guys grew and kind of the amount of employees. Like how did it all evolve over the years?
Yeah, we actually made a decision early on that we wanted to be more of a boutique brokerage, working with a certain type of client and starting to work on our niche. And so that's what we devoted ourselves to really the entire time, was working with less clients, having less salespeople, but doing it very, very, very well. Very high level of service and what we brought to the table for the clients. We didn't want thousands of clients. We wanted hundreds of clients that we could really do a good job for and get to know on a very one-on-one basis. So we knew all of our clients very, very well.
Was that, and I want to put a pin in that and come back to that in a couple of the sales as you guys transition your books, because that's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, because the business is so much them that they can't sell it, or it's a complete earn out, or like there's a lot of complications with trying to transition the business. So I want to make sure we come back to that. So then, it was interesting when you said that you guys decided to do that, because Gayle, there's this part of like in strategic planning, like you're either choosing to do what you did or low cost, high volume. I mean, a lot of times I see people that just do things, but they don't make a decision, which actually it makes it more challenging to grow the business. So like, was it something in your guys' past, or was it just pure headache, like you want to get rid of headaches, or how did you guys decide to do that?
It was just our personalities. Our personalities were such that it wouldn't have been fulfilling for us if the business wasn't really part of us and really kind of a family. And so we wanted to really do the best we could for every single client. And if you have thousands of clients, it would just have gotten out of control. So that's just how we wanted to work.
Which is awesome. I just interviewed a guy named Gino Wickman, which he wrote a book called The Entrepreneur Leap, which is about talking about doing this stuff intentionally before you go into business, instead of all of a sudden having like a mass amount of clients and then being miserable and then wanting to dump the company because you're so miserable. So it definitely happens. So how did, like, as you guys were growing, was it, when you say you guys had a decision to be a boutique shop, what does that mean? Like, maybe give us some ideas of what that means to you. Like, how many employees? What was the setup of what boutique looks like for you guys?
Yeah, so we at the height had 20 employees. That's all we ever had, was 20 employees. And since Pat and I were the main salespeople for many, many years, we added a few here and there, but the majority of people were support people. Okay. We did something very innovative that no one else had ever done, and we actually hired an underwriter from an insurance company. And so we wanted to focus on having basically a setup or support people that were the top in their industry, and we're going to give our clients just A+ level 10 care and counseling. And so we spent our money more on the support people and really less on salespeople. So as it ended up, when we sold the business, we only had 3 other salespeople.
Interesting.
And we needed them to basically, as we exited, to take on the clients that we were now moving on from.
Interesting. So, I mean, what percentage of your and Pat's clients were the overall book? 80-20 kind of thing?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So maybe walk us through, Gayle, because you guys sold the business twice, which I found it's a more common story than you would think. I've had quite a few people on the show that have actually done that. And it's usually because of the interest. It's usually because of the first one didn't go as anticipated. So how, like, where in the, so if you guys started in 84, when did that, why did you guys sell the first time, and what transpired, and how did that all kind of unfold?
Okay. Well, probably remember back in the 90s, there was talk, politically and economically, of a single payer system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there was a time when it really seemed like it was going to happen. So that was kind of like, we felt like it was a warning. But meanwhile, we had one of my larger clients was on the board of a medical malpractice insurance company. And they wanted to buy an employee benefits firm to then offer benefits to their medical group clients, because that's all they, as a medical malpractice insurance company, their clients were physicians at hospitals and also at medical groups. And that was our niche, was hospitals and medical groups. And so they approached us and made us an offer that was really too good to be true, along with, in the back of our minds, wondering, is single payer coming or not? And so we made the decision based on really the offer and that kind of looming possibility.
Yeah, economic thing you just don't know about. So
we sold it in 1999.
So it's funny, Gayle, because what I think is really interesting about your story is, as you'd said in your part of the recording, and we'll get into, is that both of them approached you, and I was explaining how often that's happening these days. And so, like, in my keynotes, I explain to, in our we have these 5 principles, and then the third one is the different types of exit options, and most people don't realize how many there are, and so many times it's either the strategic buy or the random out of the blue offer that comes, from unsolicited. But how did you, what was the relationship build up before they offered this to you? Because I think, and the reason behind this question is, because a lot of entrepreneurs are visionaries and very strategic, so they're always thinking about the opportunities, and they're opportunistic about, like, what could happen with their industry, and how to, how to sell your stuff to different clients. And so there's this infatuation with, like, what could be, but not really understanding what reality is. So, like, what was your relationship with them? And then how did that dialogue transpire to the point where they actually offered it to you?
Yeah. Well, we knew nothing about them. I'd never even heard of them. Being in benefits, they're in medical malpractice, is in the the liability end of insurance, which we were not in. So I had never heard of them. But what their promise is their clients, so I mentioned their clients are physicians and hospitals. Many of my clients were their clients, but they had so many more that we did not have. So it was an opportunity to, number one, be endorsed by them, because they owned us. So we would have access to their clients that weren't ours yet. They were in Minneapolis and we're in St. Paul. They said, you are going to stay in St. Paul. You are going to continue to run your business just as you have. A long arm will be there for you, and you have access to our clients, but you're basically going to run the business completely on your own. And thirdly, they have offices in 4 other states, and they were also going to assist in our growth into the other states. So I know that kind of goes against what I said earlier, in that we didn't want to grow so much, but we thought, well, maybe this is an opportunity to give that a try. And what ended up transpiring is we were able to access their clients, and we did write more business. The expanding to the other states really never did happen. And again, maybe that's a function of us really reflecting and thinking we really don't want to do that anyway. So that could have been part of us, but the opportunity didn't really present itself. And then the biggest difference was, even though they were managing us on a very, as I mentioned, light relationship. Yeah. there still were significant cultural differences. They were more corporate and we were not. And so sometimes
I know Pat. So like, yeah, right. All right, Pat, we're going to sit down and we're going to do these very structured meetings every 2 days.
Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that wasn't very good. And oh my gosh, all the different forms we had to constantly sign and submit. Yeah. So, but the smartest thing that actually Pat was the one who brought this up when we structured the agreement as far as the purchase and the sale, we put a buyback clause in the document so
really?
that at the end of there was a 4-year buyout. And at the end of the 4 years, if we wanted to, we could buy ourselves back.
Oh, wow.
So that clause was in there, and we had the right to exercise it whether they approved or not. Wow. Yeah. So we did. We said, we're buying ourselves back. This isn't working. And they had no choice but to agree.
Super interesting. So I want to, there's a lot to unpack in there too. So like, and before I go back, because I'm curious on like the deal structure and then how some of the things worked in those 4 years, but was there a predetermined valuation like methodology for when you were to buy them back? Or if you were to buy yourself? Okay, so you didn't have to like renegotiate valuation. It was was there a formula?
No, the formula was pretty much the same one that they bought us, the same kind of structure. So how they purchased us, then we could purchase ourselves back with the same terms.
Interesting. Super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So to go back to
gives you an out just in case it doesn't work.
Right. And so when you guys were going through the first like structuring negotiation, so did they reach out to you out of the blue, and then what was the team of advisors like? I mean, to put something like that in there, I don't know if that was Pat's idea just because, or your idea because of the competitive nature of your guys' DNA, or was it like advice, and like how did that overall structure work? And I'm curious, and kind of some more context behind the question is that when you have a business like yours that's very reliant on you two because you're the relationships, and then I can see the appeal behind someone doing more back office, etc. Like, what was the? Because I've heard it too many times, Gayle, where there's all these promises of what could be, but like in the nature of a strategic purchase, someone else with different culture, different people, it's a different world. And then how you run, that's one thing, but then how you run your financials is another thing. So, some things that ends up happening is like, oh yeah, we're going to do this earn out, but then the owner's no longer in charge of the finances. So the potential of hitting that earn out goes like way down because they're not controlling the resources anymore. So like, how does that maybe kind of go? Like, I know I asked a lot there, but like from the team of advisors, and then how you negotiated the structure and how it ended up on the other side.
Well, we had very expensive and very good attorneys. And we found it really interesting that when we sat at the table with the $400 million insurance company attorney, our attorneys were better prepared and better qualified and did an amazing job. And so that awesome. Surprised us that we thought, what a good idea to, even if it costs more, just get the best advice you possibly can. So we had two awesome attorneys from one of the largest, I think it is the largest law firm in Minneapolis. And then we had an accountant you probably know, Jim Redpath.
Oh, yeah.
Who is, awesome.
A machine.
Oh, so we just had the best advisors, and we were just so lucky. And that made all the difference in the world. And we made sure of that the second time around, too. They weren't the same ones. We chose some different ones, and that was because of another relationship, but it was the second largest law firm in Minneapolis. So we always had excellent advice.
Well, that's so cool.
Was really, really important.
So many times, I mean, what I've seen, we went through it is like a lot of people don't know how to hire good advice, and or they're like, they get what they pay for, right? They try and go for the garage, the back of the garage attorney or CPA. And like, if you don't know what you don't know, you're not even going to know that you missed out. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
You're interested. So after they kind of structure everything, was it like, I don't know, I mean, you don't have to give specifics, but like cash up front, was it a buyout over time? And then was it tied to you guys retaining clients, or was it tied to growth into the other marketplaces? Or what was kind of the makeup of that?
Yeah, they gave us a down payment, and then, but the balance was based on retention of clients, and it was a multiple of the revenue. And then they also gave us a salary, and they also paid us commission on groups that we sold. And then they also funded a deferred comp.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So like, I mean, there's I was going to say it's too good because you wanted to stay kind of thing, or what?
No, they realized after about 1 year, and this caused a lot of, I guess, some conflict, and was that they realized that the deal that they had negotiated was not advantageous to them. And so they did ask within a year if they could change the terms. But,
hey, Gayle and Pat, you guys are making too much money. How about we change your comp plan? Like, well, that's a good negotiation.
Yeah, like no. And
yeah, right.
And then just as this was kind of like probably the final stab when we did decide to buy it back. We had to do the same thing that they did, put down a down payment. So we used the deferred comp money that they gave us as the down payment.
That's fantastic. We're gonna buy ourselves back with the money that you gave us.
Your money.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Did you in that agreement then, was there any like clause of like, if you guys bought it back, you'd owe them money back, or like, was it just the deal was paid for and then you guys just went back and based on the same valuation, you just paid for it again?
Yes. So we it was fair and square. Yep.
So then
so we paid them back over 4 years.
Okay.
Again. Was
it worth more? I don't know if you can say it and you can choose to plead the fifth. Was it worth more or less when you guys bought it back?
It was worth more.
Okay. So this is probably then, now if I'm doing the math correct, it's 2003-ish, 4. Then
yes.
Well, like as you and Pat, I can't imagine the conversation of going, okay, we're going to do this. So was your conversations, your vision, your strategy, now that you had gone through this once, how did your like forward vision change? Like, what were some of the things like, we're going to do this? Like, what was the comment? Like, what was the new vision and new target for you guys and to want to do this?
Well, we still, because of them, we did develop all new relationships with new medical groups and with hospitals. And it just kind of more or less entrenched us further into our niche. So that was very helpful. So after we left them, we wrote a lot of new business because of that past relationship. So that was a good thing. So we just kind of picked up where we left off and continued to sell and grow the business with no intention of selling it again. Just, okay, we're back on track and we're just going to grow the business as we had started, and let's just keep moving on and grow.
Was there some kind of things that you were like, I don't want to do that again? Like, is it more like you wanted to engineer a life that you guys liked more instead of like, okay, well, we went through this, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that because that sucked, or those were headaches. I mean, like, this is what we're not going to have to deal with because now that you've made some money and you're back on track and hopefully it's easier. I mean, was there certain things that you said, okay, here's what our new model is going to be, or our new forward plan?
Well, we knew that our culture didn't blend with corporate culture. I think that we learned that we really missed being 100% independent. I think that's one thing that we
red tape and lots of meetings.
Yeah, we didn't miss that.
So
no,
what was over so 2003, I mean, so you got another 10 years then that you grew it. When you say you had no intention to sell, was it just have fun, grow? And even though you'd already gone through a sale, it didn't because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, Gayle, think that, like, even though they realize, I mean, they don't realize that they're going to sell or something's going to happen. It's going to happen. But like, that didn't recalibrate you to say, okay, we're going to actually grow this because now we understand valuations and to harvest value, or was it? It just didn't matter to you at that point, or?
No, and we thought we would continue to. Well, we did continue to grow fantastically after that, but then we decided I think it was 2011. We thought, because I have a lot of clients in a city that's about an hour from the Twin Cities, and so we thought, let's open a second office in this particular city. And we had a consultant that we were working with at the time. And the consultant said, you know what you should do is you should at least get to know one other property and casualty business. So an insurance brokerage that complements what you do, since we just did benefits. So you should introduce yourself to one of them. So we did. We chose out of the blue one of the larger P&C agencies in that city. And strangely, 8 years earlier, which I did not know, they had been purchased by a private equity firm. And that's how that all happened. They then introduced us to the private equity firm. And then after about 8 months or 9 months, it was decided that we would merge with this company, which is about an hour away from the Twin Cities. And then we'd also merge with another company that the private equity firm owned about an hour and a half on the other side of the Twin Cities, so south of the Twin Cities. And so they would merge the three of us and we would become one company. And once again, the private equity firm would basically be there at arm's length, actually out of Ohio, and let us run our company. And they would own a percentage of it, but not 100%.
Because a bunch of people rolled some money into it. Yep, rolled a bunch of money into it then.
Yeah. So all three of us came together as one company. So
you only had a year or two that you guys were back by yourself?
No. So we had sold in
2011. I'm sorry. There was a decade. I'm sorry. I missed the zero.
Was 10 years later. Yeah. So we were independent for 10 years. And then we did this, which is not really, we didn't consider it really being bought out. We considered it merging with two other entities and having the ability to really grow this business along with a private equity firm who has obviously cash.
Yep. So I want to peel apart some of that timeline too. So before you guys, had those conversations, which makes sense because so many, the PE firms are just on a hunt, especially right now. Like I was saying, they're out there in lightning speed trying to acquire companies. But to go back for the decade that you guys were by yourself, did you shift any of your strategies as more like value creation strategies, like because you had realized kind of how value worked the first time? And I don't know, maybe you're in the agency model, it might not be as complicated as some other businesses because you have producers and then you have back office. But is there anything that you did differently to lead up to that conversation that led it to be more transferable or easier to sell?
I would say no.
So when you what was the reasoning to partner up with the P&C agency then? Was it just kind of more the growth because they've got clients, you've got clients, you don't compete then?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And they could refer their P&C people to us, clients, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. So what I find interesting about the P&C roll-up models that's going on right now, Gayle, is that you still, even if all this, I joke around because there's my partner, the PE firm that bought their company rolled up 17 companies in 24 months. And I just think about it from two different angles is if every single system process went perfectly, you still have people that you're having to integrate together. So even if all the back office stuff worked, in your situation, you have I don't know what the other owners were like, but I couldn't imagine having 4 Gayle and Pats in a room all trying to figure out what direction everybody's going. And just the nature of these dynamics, it's all like regardless of what industry. So like, what was it like? Like, what was their if you get 3 people merging into one, was there like, what was the strategy for like who's going to lead? Was there like a structure for like how this is actually going to work from a people and a processes perspective?
There was originally. It started off not so good. We all got into a room. There was other owners, and not everybody knew this was happening.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So it didn't start off real well. And yes, there were a lot of people in charge, and everybody wanted to be in charge. So, so yes, totally. It wasn't great. What happened was, because we were in 3 different locations, initially we kind of still acted as though we were 3 different companies. So we still went about our business, they went about theirs, but someone had to be the CEO of the new entity, and Pat was chosen to be the initial CEO, and he was for the first 3 years. And it was his job to integrate, to go in and look at the balance sheets and straighten them out. So there was a lot to do. One of the brokerages was 100 years old, and
oh my gosh,
half the people there were the same age.
Yeah.
They were.
Well, a bunch of founders that like hit the
coffee. They
just riding their renewals, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh
so
my gosh.
There was a lot of work that had to be done, and it just took time. And so they ended up bringing in an outsider after Pat that was not part of either of the 3, and that probably ultimately was a good decision. But anyway, so the company has grown substantially, and it's a very viable. I think it's the largest independent agency in Minnesota right now.
Wow. So going back to like, why didn't some people know? Were those like second in commands, or was it?
Yes.
Okay. So you're
they
dealing with like
commands.
Got it.
And they didn't have ownership yet, but they were promised ownership.
Oh boy!
So that's why they were brought in. And they ultimately did get ownership.
So, well, and that's what it's interesting if based on like the structure of the private equity firm. I don't know how much you can share, but like I teach a lot about how private equity firms are formed. You got the fund, and I don't know what fund they were on, or like where they were in their timeline and where they got their money. But like we teach in our boot camp like where they get their money, where they're at in their fund, whether they've done this before, and then honestly like how they work with you from a management perspective. Like, so maybe I don't know if you can. If I'm assuming most of that's public because they have to post all that stuff. But where did they get their money, and like what was the overall structure behind them?
Yeah, very, very, very unique. All of the executives, or at least the top executives, came from a property and casualty insurance company. And I'm not sure if it was a client, maybe it was, but it was a Canadian teachers pension fund. That is what's funding this private equity. So they have one boss, and it's teachers. So, they're pretty easy to work with. And so that's their role is to basically set up large property and casualty agencies throughout the country. But their unique structure is that they allow the owners to retain ownership so that they have a, basically skin in the game, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, again, totally arm's length.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you don't have a bunch of right. They look at financial, but it's a little bit different than some PE firms where like they're coming from, I call them like the financial engineers, where they're micromanaging based on spreadsheets and how you're doing. Yeah. Just totally different than that.
When this all came together, Pat asked the CEO of the private equity, so how often should we meet? Do you want to meet weekly, on the phone, or should I fly out quarterly, or how do you want to handle this? And the CEO said 3 words: I'll call you. That was it.
Oh, and was Pat just crossing his fingers that it's hopefully not every hour?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
How about some timelines?
Bottom line was, he. I don't know that he hardly ever called Pat. We had to submit financials, and I think there was a once a year meeting with all of the acquisitions, but it was very hands off, and that's been the means of their success, really.
Well, that's awesome. So they're
a great company.
Did the fund have an actual life span? Because usually, like a PE fund, will be like 7 to 10 years long, and then they have to sell everything. Or is this?
Yeah, no, they don't.
Really interesting.
Mm-mm.
Because they're directly owned by the teacher's pension, so therefore it's just a long hold, and there's no goal to flip it.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, that's very, very unique. So when you guys, when the different, executives or, second in command, or you and Pat and the owners got to roll money into it, was it just one entity? So instead of a fund, was it an actual entity that you guys all rolled and probably some equity into? And then was there buyout structure? How did that whole, keeping this, they call it the second bite or skin in the game, like you're talking about, how did that whole structure work?
Yeah, well, we just formed a new company, changed the name. So eventually our names went away. Took, not after a few years, all the other names, the decision was, we didn't know if we should keep all three names or roll it into one. So finally the decision was made to roll it into one. And then all the new owners just had an equity position in the new entity.
Interesting. That's so cool, because you just don't hear that setup too often.
Yeah, it's really a good one. It's a good setup.
Because you had 2 out of the blue offers, and going through this one, what was your team of advisors, your legal structure? You said you hired slightly different people, but working with a completely different setup. So it's not an insurance company or strategic buyer; it's a financial buyer. What was that with the team of advisors? How did the negotiation, the deal structure work? I mean, was it completely different experience?
Only because in the second buyout, it wasn't based on revenue; it was based on EBITDA.
Interesting.
And I'm super embarrassed to tell you, I didn't even know what that was.
I don't even be embarrassed. Right. It was slightly important. Slightly important, right? I mean, we're talking multiples of EBITDA.
Fast. Yeah. I learned fast. So that's how they did it, which I suppose, obviously is more financially based.
That's so did you use an investment banker at all on the second one?
No.
So but you're using a CPA and an attorney still. So they're you had help understanding, getting probably a crash course on what all that stuff meant. Was there any kind of interesting negotiations of what true EBITDA, normalized or true EBITDA was, or was it pretty straightforward?
I think, it was straightforward. And even the private equity firm helped educate us.
Yeah. It's super interesting.
They were great.
So what was the, any kind of thoughts on the dynamics of having that many alpha individuals in one? I'm sure there's some stuff behind that. How do you make something like that work? How did you guys choose the power dynamics, or what the vision of, because the whole point of buying companies and rolling them up like that is to grow, right? So right. I'm sure it was a little clunky at first, and then as you said, you had some good success. So what were the power dynamics, and then how did you guys determine what the ultimate vision was?
Well, I think ultimately, again, Pat was in charge for the first 3 years, and it wasn't easy to blend everyone together, but everybody kind of understood that if we're going to make it, we got to get along and get this together. So ultimately, it all kind of worked out. And some of the power people, such as myself, decided to leave. So I retired after 5 years, or I decided to leave because I felt it was time for me to go. And so I think some of the other people have made that decision as well. So I think that helped for some of us to say, okay, it's time to bow out and let them move ahead.
So a couple of questions on that is like with you and Pat, and I don't know how the other people from the different companies manage their books, but like with all the relationships that you had, what was the transition like? I mean, how did you guys go about doing that with clients? And
well, because I had a fantastic team with me when we were working with the clients, so that when the clients, they didn't just look to me.
Got it.
They had it was about 4 of us on a team, and so for me to bow out and bring in another person it was very accepted because the other 3 team members weren't leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So when we went on appointments, it was always all 4 of us. So they saw us as 4 different individuals that do 4 different things. Me being strictly strategic.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I can prove to them that I'm bringing in another individual that has that same strategic mindset, then they felt comfortable. And we didn't do this quickly. It was gradual. So they knew a whole year in advance I was leaving.
Oh, that helps then. So there's not any panic or anything like that.
No. And so there was a whole year, and they totally understood and accepted it, and I didn't have any pushback.
A question on and this is kind of coming from myself and a lot of the stories that I've heard, like regardless of any buyer, like as you have a founder entrepreneur that has grown, you sold twice. And did you look at the business like your baby and your clients? And then like, what was it like going through this transition, honestly, emotionally or mentally, Gayle? Because I think there's a dynamic where like, I remember like all the stuff that I had kind of helped build and things that I was running at our business. Like it's just weird when it's no longer yours.
Yeah, it is. The way that the structure was with the private equity, though, you did feel like it was still your company. But to then leave it, I think the hardest part was leaving the people that you worked with for 20 years, both clients and employees. So that was the hardest part, was saying goodbye to people, really. I didn't look at the business as a baby. I looked at it individually as individual clients and all our individual employees, and so sad to miss the people, not the business.
Well, it's interesting that you say that.
People are the business, but
no.
It wasn't the business; it was the people.
You bring up a good point, and literally the title of the podcast is "Life After Business," and it's grown over the 3.5 years to like the technical stuff, because I think you need to know the technical stuff so you can actually get your ideal outcome, whatever that looks like. But the crazy part about and it's our first principle called your drivers. Like, what do you want? And like, I think a lot of people, they don't realize that the business is their way of interacting with their like community and relationships, your products, your vendors, your employees, your clients. They're your whole like fabric of community. And it's
right.
How did is that, I don't know if you got any insights on that or just more as you're still processing it. Like, I think reinventing that without the business is extremely hard.
Well, fortunately, I have other interests beyond the business and, great social network. So that's helped. If I had lived my life entirely within the business, I think that would have been a real radical change. But Pat and I both do a lot socially, and so that didn't end.
Do you see a lot of, I don't know if you have other owners that are friends, do you see a lot of other people where they do the opposite of that, where it's everything to them and then they've walked out? And
yeah, that'd be tough.
So if you were
be tough.
Yeah, I've seen it. If you were to go back and, talk to yourself before, either before either of these sales, in between, like as you're growing, like, is there any like feedback or what would be some of the insights you'd give yourself back then?
I think that's a great question. So much of what we did wasn't planned. It just happened. And so I can't give myself any insight because so much of it was just unplanned. It just happened. So I don't know. That's what's so interesting, and Pat and I will talk about this. Is so both of the buyers approached us. We weren't even looking, and so how did that happen? I didn't put feelers out. Nothing. It just came to us. So I don't really have any advice to myself. Except,
well, it's because do you think it went well?
You didn't plan.
Well, what I find
let things happen as they should.
There's a lot to be said about that. There's definitely a reason my business model is a little bit more challenging than we wouldn't have thought, because a lot of people I think live the same way. But and that sounds like because you're proud about the outcome or happy with it, and I might be putting words in your mouth, but like there's a stat by an author called Bo Burlingham. He was the editor of Inc. magazine that I've interviewed and talked to, and he wrote a book. And 75% of owners are unhappy 12 months later because they actually let things happen, but it was like a deceptive buyer, or they didn't get the right terms, or they didn't get their money. There's so many things, and I find it interesting, like how it can go exactly the way you want, and you surround yourself by good advisors during the deal, though. Like, I mean, that's because that could make or break when and how you actually, how things transpire.
And we have zero turnover amongst our employees. Literally, they've all been there 20 to 25 years, and I think having people that you trust is so important. Yeah. And so I feel when I walked away, I knew I could trust all of them to continue to service the clients as I would have. So I felt really confident about that, which made me feel very good.
So then, did you have that same level of trust in the second buyer?
Yes, I absolutely did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think that's the hard part, where because people can say good things, but that doesn't mean that you still walk away feeling a little weary about the situation.
Yes, no, I trust them, and the employees are, they had to scale back on some things that we did for our employees, which was we did a lot more than the average business, definitely. So some of those things were taken away. But it was done very gradually, and the employees are still paid, very, very well. And so overall, it's worked out.
So for someone like yourself that has been a rainmaker for decades in your business and as an entrepreneur, how are you dealing with retirement? I mean, is it like what's on the agenda? How are you do you have any advice for someone that's trying to figure out different hobbies? Are you finding a way to get the rush and the adrenaline outside of a business? We're here in an area that has endless amounts of things to do, from sports to, all sorts of things. So that's really good. We're in a climate that you can be outside all the time. That probably helps.
I can't imagine sitting in a house. That would drive me crazy. So we're in a climate where you can be outside all the time, which I think is great. And it's only been, I'm closing in on 2 years. And so we are talking, should we start another business? So we might.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're not old. So
what now, right?
Yeah. What now? So we have possibilities, and we're looking at that. So.
Well, this has been so
nice
much
2-year break.
Now, is there a little itch going on that's got to be scratched?
A little bit. But who knows? If it's not right, I'm not going to do it. That's
perfect. There's no reason to throw the dice and gamble everything all over again, right?
Oh my gosh, no.
Well, I appreciate this.
I hate to say it, we didn't end up a billionaire, but
right. I mean, it doesn't. You know what? It's so funny when you boil it all down to it, Gayle. You don't need all you're concerned about is annual income, right? And then obviously there's the legacy planning and all the other stuff. But you don't to live the life that you want to doesn't take as much as some people might think. Yeah,
right.
Well, I appreciate this. Has been so fun. If there's I don't know if there's any contact information you want to leave for the listeners. Otherwise, maybe just a LinkedIn or anything like that. And if someone wants to reach out.
I have a LinkedIn. It's under my name, Gayle McCann. So feel free to leave messages at the LinkedIn. That's great.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, Ryan. Have a great afternoon and happy holidays.